A girl levitated and was thrown across her bedroom by invisible hands while police watched. A witch killed a man, and the death certificate officially said so. A ghost woman slapped a caretaker in the face 3 times. A soldier with half his face blown off stood at the end of someone's bed for 3 nights. These 4 stories are real paranormal cases from the UK, USA, Canada, and Australia. They're documented by police, investigators, courts, and multiple witnesses. They challenge what we think is possible. If you're easily disturbed, this is your warning. Let's begin.
I'm Janet Hodson, and I'm the girl at the center of what became known as the Enfield Poltergeist case. What happened to me and my family between 1977 and 1979 in our council house in North London is the most documented poltergeist case in British history. Over 30 witnesses saw what happened: police, journalists, paranormal investigators, neighbors. I'm telling this story because people still don't believe it was real, but it was. We lived at 284 Green Street in Enfield. It was me, my older sister Margaret, my younger brothers Johnny and Billy, and our mom, Peggy. We weren't wealthy. We lived in a modest house. Mom was raising us alone after our dad left. It was normal life until August 30, 1977. That night, me and Johnny were in our bedroom getting ready for sleep. Suddenly, our beds started shaking. Not like someone was pushing them. They were shaking on their own, violently. We started shouting for Mom. When she ran upstairs, we told her what happened. She thought we were messing around. But then we all heard knocking sounds coming from the walls, loud, deliberate knocks. Bang, 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 moving around the room like someone was walking inside the walls, knocking as they went. Mom checked everything. There was nothing that could explain it. The next night, it got worse. A heavy chest of drawers slid across the room. Nobody touched it. It just moved on its own, 18 inches across the floor. Mom saw it happen. She called our neighbor, a builder named Vic Nottingham. He came over and heard the knocking too. He couldn't explain it either.
Mom called the police. A woman police constable came to investigate. Her name was Carolyn Heaps, and she wrote an official report about what she saw. While she was standing in our living room, a chair moved on its own. It wobbled and then slid across the floor. The police officer saw it happen, and she couldn't explain it. She wrote in her report that the chair moved, but she could not determine the cause. After that, the newspapers got interested. A reporter from the Daily Mirror came with a photographer. They witnessed objects flying across rooms, toys being thrown, furniture moving. The photographer, Graham Morris, took hundreds of pictures. Some of them show me appearing to levitate above my bed. People think those photos are fakes, that I'm just jumping on the bed, but I wasn't. Something was lifting me and throwing me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, already in the air, being hurled across the room. I'd land hard, bruised and terrified. This happened over and over. Then paranormal investigators from the Society for Psychical Research got involved. Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair. They spent over a year at our house, documenting everything. They recorded hundreds of hours of audio and video. They witnessed things they couldn't explain. The worst part was the voice. It started a few months into the haunting. I would speak, but it wasn't my voice coming out. It was a deep, raspy man's voice, like an old man who smoked too much. The voice said its name was Bill Wilkins and that it had died in the house years ago. Investigators recorded this voice. You can listen to the tapes. It's not me doing ventriloquism or vocal tricks. Medical doctors examined me while the voice was happening. They put water in my mouth. They held my throat. The voice still came out. They couldn't explain how a young girl could produce those sounds. Bill Wilkins' voice would say disturbing things. It said it died in the chair downstairs,
that it went blind before dying, that it had a hemorrhage. Years later, investigators tracked down Bill Wilkins' son. He confirmed his father had died in that house, in the chair, blind from a hemorrhage, exactly as the voice described. The activity was relentless for 18 months. Things would be thrown at us, we'd be pulled out of our beds. Margaret and I would levitate. We'd be scratched and pinched by invisible hands. The worst was feeling completely helpless, like we were being attacked by something we couldn't see or fight. Some investigators thought we were faking it. A few incidents probably were faked, I'll admit that. When you're a kid dealing with this much attention, sometimes you want to test if people are really paying attention. I'd say maybe 2% of what happened was us messing around. The other 98% was real and terrifying. Maurice Gross witnessed me being dragged across the floor by my feet. Multiple neighbors saw me levitating through the window from outside. 2 witnesses, a baker and a woman who worked as a crossing guard, were walking past our house and saw me floating above my bed, spinning and banging against the window. They reported it immediately.
American paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren visited briefly. Ed Warren decided it was demonic possession and wanted to perform an exorcism, but the British investigators didn't agree. They thought it was a poltergeist, which is different from a demon. A poltergeist is usually connected to a young person going through puberty, and the activity is more chaotic than intelligent. I was 11 when it started. I was going through puberty. Some researchers think that created some kind of energy that the poltergeist could use. Others think I was somehow causing it myself unconsciously. I don't know. All I know is it was real, and I wasn't doing it on purpose. The activity finally stopped in 1979, almost as suddenly as it started. We were able to stay in the house and things went back to normal, but the damage was done. We'd been terrorized for 18 months. We'd become famous for being the haunted family. Kids at school bullied us, called us freaks and attention seekers. The case inspired books, documentaries, and movies. The Conjuring 2 was based on our story, though it exaggerated things and focused too much on the Warrens, who were barely involved. In 2023, Apple TV made a documentary using the original audio recordings and recreating our house. I'm in my 50s now. People still ask me if it was real. I get frustrated because I lived through it. I know what happened to me. Skeptics can say whatever they want, but they weren't there. They didn't feel invisible hands grabbing them. They didn't hear that voice coming out of their own mouth. They didn't spend night after night terrified in their own home.
Maurice Gross believed until he died that what happened to us was genuine paranormal activity. Guy Lyon Playfair wrote a book about it and defended the case for decades. The police officer who witnessed the chair moving never changed her story. The neighbors who saw me levitating never recanted. Over 2,000 incidents were documented during those 18 months. Yes, a few were probably pranks, but you can't fake everything. You can't fake a police report. You can't fake multiple independent witnesses. You can't fake recordings of an 11-year-old girl producing a 70-year-old man's voice while her mouth is full of water. The Enfield poltergeist case is still studied by parapsychologists today.
My name is Richard Williams Bell, and I'm writing this account of what happened to my family when I was just a boy. I was only 6 years old when the Bell Witch first appeared, but I remember everything. What I'm about to tell you is documented in multiple sources and witnessed by dozens of people. This isn't folklore. This happened. In 1817, my father, John Bell, was inspecting his cornfields on our farm near Adams, Tennessee. He saw a strange animal among the corn rows. It had the body of a large dog, but the head of a rabbit. My father raised his musket and fired at it, but the creature vanished. He thought it was just an unusual animal and didn't think much of it.
That was his first mistake, because a few days later, strange things started happening in our home. It began with noises. At night, we'd hear scratching on the windows, sounds like rats gnawing on the bedposts, but when we looked, there were no rats. Sounds like heavy chains being dragged across the floor, but nothing was there. The sound of someone choking and gasping, but no one was hurt. My older siblings, especially my sister Betsy, started complaining that something was pulling their hair and pinching them while they slept. My father would investigate, but find nothing. The activity kept getting worse. Then the entity started making its presence known more directly. Furniture would move on its own. Objects would fly across rooms. My brothers and I would be pulled from our beds by invisible hands. But the worst was what happened to Betsy and my father.
Betsy was only about 12 years old. The entity seemed fixated on her. She'd be slapped across the face by invisible hands so hard she'd have red marks. Her hair would be yanked violently. She'd be pinched and scratched constantly. She was terrified to be alone. My father also became a target. He'd be struck and tormented relentlessly. His face would twitch and spasm for no medical reason. He developed trouble swallowing. His health started declining rapidly. Then the entity started talking. At first it was just whispers and mumblings, but eventually it developed a clear voice that could be heard throughout the house. Multiple people heard it, dozens of witnesses. The voice would insult my father, calling him names, threatening him. It seemed to hate him specifically. When asked who or what it was, the voice eventually said it was a spirit. It called itself Kate, after a local woman named Kate Batts, who my father had a business dispute with. Some people thought the witch was sent by Kate Batts to torment us, though she denied it. The witch had abilities that shouldn't be possible. One famous incident involved 2 church sermons. Reverend James Gunn and Reverend Sugg Fort gave sermons at the same time in churches 12 miles apart. The witch recited both sermons perfectly, word for word, even though they happened simultaneously. It was like the witch could be in multiple places at once. The witch showed different attitudes toward different family members. It hated my father and Betsy, but it loved my mother. It called her the most perfect woman living and would actually care for her when she was ill, singing to her and comforting her. This selective behavior convinced many people it was an intelligent entity, not just random phenomena.
My father's health kept declining. He developed facial paralysis. He couldn't swallow properly. He had terrible pain and neurological problems. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. The witch would mock him, saying it was killing him slowly. On December 19, 1820, my father fell into a stupor. He was barely conscious. We found a strange vial of dark liquid in the medicine cabinet that none of us recognized. We gave some to the cat to test it, and the cat died immediately. We threw the vial into the fireplace, and a bright blue flame shot up the chimney. The witch's voice cackled and said, "I gave old Jack a dose of that last night, which fixed him." My father died the next day. His death certificate is the only one in American history to officially attribute death to supernatural causes. The witch had killed him. But even that wasn't the end of it. At my father's funeral, the witch's voice could be heard singing drinking songs and making crude jokes as the mourners passed through the graveyard. It was mocking us even at the burial. After my father's death, the witch focused entirely on preventing Betsy from marrying a local boy named Joshua Gardner. Betsy was in love with Joshua, and they were engaged, but the witch terrorized her relentlessly about it. Finally, in March 1821, Betsy couldn't take it anymore and broke off the engagement. Shortly after, the witch announced it was leaving. It said it would return in 7 years. True to its word, in 1828, the witch did return briefly, but only for a few weeks. It talked with my older brother John Jr. for hours, discussing religion and philosophy. Then it said it would return again in 1935, but when 1935 came, nothing major happened. Some people reported minor disturbances near the property, but nothing like what we experienced.
The Bell Witch case became famous across America. Even General Andrew Jackson, who later became president, supposedly visited our farm to investigate. According to family stories, Jackson's wagon wouldn't move when they tried to approach our property, and the witch's voice laughed at them. Jackson's men fled in terror. Modern researchers have tried to explain what happened. Some say my father was poisoned with arsenic, which would explain the blue flame and some of his symptoms. But that doesn't explain the levitation, the objects moving, the voice that could recite sermons from 12 miles away, or the dozens of witnesses who saw things that defied explanation. The farm still exists near Adams, Tennessee. There's a cave on the property called the Bell Witch Cave, where people still report paranormal activity today. Investigators have documented strange sounds, cold spots, and unexplained phenomena. The cave is considered one of the most haunted places in America. I'm writing this account as an old man now, decades after these events. I've had my whole life to think about what happened to my family. I've tried to make sense of it, but there is no rational explanation for what we experienced. The Bell Witch was real. It tormented my family for years. It killed my father, and dozens of respectable witnesses can verify every word I've written.
My name is Robert Edmonds, and my wife is Alex. We were caretakers at Mackenzie House in Toronto in the late 1950s and early 1960s. What happened to us in that house is the reason it's considered the most haunted building in Canada. I'm telling this story now because people deserve to know the truth about what we experienced. Mackenzie House is at 82 Bond Street in downtown Toronto. It was the home of William Lyon Mackenzie, Toronto's first mayor and leader of the failed 1837 rebellion. He lived there from 1859 until his death in 1861. After his family left, it became a rooming house where many people lived and died over the years. In the 1950s, it was turned into a museum, and Alex and I were hired as live-in caretakers. We knew the house had a reputation for being haunted, but we didn't believe in ghosts. We thought it was just stories to attract tourists. We moved into the second-floor living quarters in 1957 and started our duties maintaining the museum. The first few weeks were normal. We'd give tours during the day, lock up at night, and sleep upstairs. But then things started happening that we couldn't explain. It began with footsteps. At night, after the museum was closed and locked, we'd hear footsteps on the stairs. Clear, distinct footsteps, like someone walking up and down. I'd go to investigate, and there was never anyone there. At first, I thought it was just the old house settling. Old buildings make noise. But then, we started hearing the piano. The parlor on the main floor has an old piano from the 1800s. Multiple nights, Alex and I would be upstairs in bed, and we'd hear the piano being played. Not random notes, but actual music. Someone was playing melodies.
I'd rush downstairs thinking someone had broken in, but the doors and windows would all be locked from the inside. The piano lid would be down. No one was there, yet we'd both heard music coming from that room. The printing press in the basement was even stranger. Mackenzie had been a journalist, and there's an old printing press down there as part of the exhibit. Several times we'd hear it operating late at night, the distinctive sound of the press running, type being set. I'd go down there, and the press would be still, but I swear it had just been running seconds before. One morning, I went down to the basement and found something that made my blood run cold. Someone had used the printing press to spell out words with the type. The words were "responsible government," which was Mackenzie's political slogan. Nobody had been in that basement except me and Alex. The museum had been locked all night. But the most terrifying experiences involved direct encounters with apparitions. Alex was the first to see something. She woke up one night feeling someone tap her shoulder. She opened her eyes, and there was a woman standing over our bed. The woman had long, dark hair and a pale, narrow face. She was bending over the bed, looking right at Alex. Then she vanished. Alex was shaken, but we tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe she was half asleep and imagined it. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Same thing. Alex woke up to someone tapping her shoulder. The same woman was there, but this time, instead of just vanishing, she drew back her hand and slapped Alex hard across the face. The impact was real. It left a red mark. Then the woman disappeared.
After that incident, Alex was too frightened to sleep properly. We started keeping lights on at night. We'd lie awake listening for sounds. The house felt oppressive, like we were being watched constantly. I saw the male apparition several times. He was a small, bald man wearing an old-fashioned wig and frock coat, exactly matching descriptions of William Lyon Mackenzie. I'd see him standing near the printing press in the basement or in the hallway upstairs. He never spoke or approached us, just stood there watching. Then he'd fade away. Other strange things happened regularly. Water would appear in puddles on floors with no source. Doors we'd locked would be found open in the morning. Objects would move from where we'd placed them. The temperature would drop suddenly in certain rooms for no reason. We reported everything to the museum board. Some of them believed us, others thought we were making it up to attract attention to the museum. But we weren't. We were genuinely terrified. By 1960, we'd been dealing with this for over 3 years. The constant fear and lack of sleep was affecting our health. Alex was having nightmares. I was anxious all the time. We told the board we couldn't continue living there. That's when things got interesting. When we expressed our intention to leave, the museum board decided to do something unprecedented. They arranged for an Anglican archdeacon named John Frank to perform what was essentially an exorcism of the house.
The ceremony was performed and actually filmed by CBC television. It aired on TV, making the Mackenzie house hauntings famous across Canada. During the ceremony, the archdeacon blessed every room and said prayers to put the spirits to rest. When the house was officially donated to the city of Toronto in 1960, the inventory of artifacts included at the bottom of the list, "One ghost exorcised." It's believed to be the only government document in Canadian history to officially list a ghost as property. After the exorcism, Alex and I were asked by a different newspaper, the Toronto Daily Star, about our experiences. By that point, we were exhausted by all the attention and skepticism. We told them we'd made some of it up to generate interest in the museum. We partially recanted our story. But here's the truth. We didn't make it up. Not most of it, anyway. Maybe we exaggerated a few details when talking to the press. Maybe we played up some incidents that weren't that dramatic. But the core experiences, the footsteps, the piano, the printing press, the apparitions, the slap across Alex's face, all of that was real. We moved out shortly after the exorcism. Whether the blessing worked or not, we didn't want to find out. We'd had enough. Since then, dozens of other people have reported experiencing paranormal activity at Mackenzie House. Museum staff have heard footsteps and seen shadows. Visitors have reported feeling touched or pushed. The house's reputation as Toronto's most haunted building has only grown over the decades. Some people say we made the whole thing up for publicity, but I'm an old man now. I have no reason to lie. What Alex and I experienced in that house was real. The ghosts of Mackenzie House are real,
and I hope whoever lives or works there now is braver than we were.
My name is Olive Ryan, and I lived in the Monte Cristo Homestead in Junee, New South Wales for many years. What my family experienced in that house convinced me that ghosts are absolutely real. I'm telling this story because Monte Cristo is now known as Australia's most haunted house, and everything people say about it is true. The Monte Cristo homestead was built in 1885 by Christopher Crawley, a wealthy businessman. The house is a grand Victorian mansion sitting on a hill overlooking the town of Junee. It's beautiful on the outside, but there's darkness in that house that you can feel the moment you enter. The Crawley family lived there for decades, and during that time, several tragic deaths occurred on the property. Mrs. Crawley became so grief-stricken after her husband died that she rarely left the house for the last 23 years of her life. She dressed in black and stayed in her room. Some say she never recovered from the tragedies that plagued the family. One of the most horrific incidents happened with a caretaker's son. A young boy was dropped from his cot by a maid who had had some issues. He fell and died from the injuries. The maid was convicted of manslaughter and sent to a psychiatric facility where she later died. There was also a stable boy who died horrifically. He was burned to death in the stable after his bedding caught fire. His screams were heard across the property, but by the time help arrived, he was already dead. A pregnant servant girl was pushed off the balcony and fell to her death. Whether it was murder, suicide, or an accident was never fully determined. Her ghost is said to haunt the balcony area. And there were rumors of a child who was chained in the coach house and left to die, though this story is harder to verify. The coach house has always had the worst energy of any building on the property. By the time my family moved into Monte Cristo in the 1960s, the house had been empty for years. We knew about its history, but we needed a place to live, and the house was being rented cheaply. We thought the ghost stories were just local folklore. We were wrong. From the first night, we knew something was off. The house felt oppressive. There were cold spots that didn't make sense. You'd walk through a room and suddenly hit a wall of ice-cold air that made your breath visible, even on warm days. Footsteps were constant. We'd hear someone walking in the upstairs hallways when no one was up there. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, like a man wearing boots. We'd search and find nothing. Doors would open and close on their own. We'd lock doors before bed and find them wide open in the morning. We'd close doors firmly and hear them creak open minutes later. The most frightening experiences happened in the former master bedroom where Mrs. Crawley died. That room had a presence that felt malevolent. Anyone who slept in that room reported nightmares, feeling like they were being watched and waking up unable to move, like something was holding them down. My son had the worst experience. He was sleeping in one of the upstairs rooms when he woke up to see a figure standing at the foot of his bed. It was a man in old-fashioned clothing, but half of his face was missing, like it had been blown off. The figure just stood there staring at him for what felt like minutes before fading away.
My son described it as the stable boy who burned to death. The description matched accounts we'd heard from locals about what the boys supposedly looked like after the fire. This happened 3 nights in a row, the same figure standing in the same spot with half his face missing. After the 3rd night, my son refused to sleep in that room ever again. The coach house was even worse than the main house. None of us would go in there alone. It felt evil, dark, like something terrible had happened there and the energy never left. Animals refused to enter it. Our dog would bark and back away if we tried to bring him near the coach house. Locals told us stories of the property being cursed. They said that everyone who had lived at Monte Cristo experienced tragedy, deaths, illnesses, mental breakdowns. The Crawley family certainly suffered more than their share of loss, and other families who tried to live there after them didn't last long. We documented some of the activity. We took photographs where strange orbs and shadows appeared. We recorded audio where unexplained voices could be heard. Other people who visited the house experienced things too.
They weren't just our imaginations. Eventually, we moved out. The constant paranormal activity was affecting our mental health. We couldn't relax in our own home. We were always on edge, waiting for the next door to slam or the next footsteps to echo through empty rooms. After we left, Monte Cristo Homestead became a tourist attraction. The current owners give ghost tours and have investigated the paranormal activity extensively. Thousands of people have visited, and many report experiencing unexplained phenomena. Paranormal investigators have documented significant activity there. Photographs showing apparitions, EVP recordings capturing voices, temperature fluctuations that can't be explained, objects moving on their own caught on camera. The house has been featured on paranormal investigation shows and documentaries. Australia's Most Haunted called it the most actively haunted location in the country, and I believe it. I lived there. I know what's in that house. People always ask me if I really believe the house is haunted. My answer is simple. Yes, absolutely, without question. I experienced things in Monte Cristo that cannot be rationally explained. My family saw apparitions, we heard things that had no source, we felt presences that terrified us. The Monte Cristo homestead is beautiful on the outside, but it's full of tragedy and darkness. Whatever happened in that house over the decades left permanent scars on the property. The spirits of those who died there violently or tragically have never left. If you visit Monte Cristo today, you'll feel it. You'll understand why it's called Australia's most haunted house, and you'll understand why my family couldn't stay there, no matter how beautiful the building was. These 4 stories are documented paranormal cases from the UK, USA, Canada, and Australia. The Enfield Poltergeist has over 2,000 logged incidents. The Bell Witch is the only case where a death certificate lists supernatural cause. Mackenzie House ghosts were officially listed on government inventory. And Monte Cristo is Australia's most investigated haunted location. If these true paranormal stories gave you chills, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell for more real ghost encounters. Drop a comment sharing which story interested you most. Remember, these events are documented by multiple witnesses and investigators. The paranormal is real.